The man on the telephone said he had killed an innocent woman. Outside the radio station, rain swept sideways across downtown Chicago, turning the windows into sheets of black glass. Thunder rolled between the towers. The city below looked drowned in reflected neon, its streets shining red and gold beneath traffic lights that changed for almost no one. Inside Studio 3, June Parker sat alone before a silver microphone. It was 2:17 inches the morning. The red on-air light above the soundproof glass glowed like an open wound. June wore a dark green sweater that softened around her full figure, black headphones over her thick brown hair, and the calm expression her listeners trusted more than they trusted their own families. Her voice traveled through bedrooms, prison cells, hospital corridors, empty taxis, and apartments where people lay awake beside strangers they no longer loved. Her program was called The Night Window. People called when they could not carry their secrets until morning. June never asked for real names. She never judged, and she never allowed silence to frighten her. Until that night, the caller had been quiet for 11 seconds. June watched the digital timer above the console count upward. "Are you still with me?" she asked gently. A breath moved across the line. Male. Controlled. Low enough that listeners would lean closer to hear him. "I'm here." Something inside June tightened. The voice was unfamiliar. Yet her body reacted before her mind understood. Her fingers went cold against the edge of the console. A strange pressure formed behind her eyes. She had heard that voice before. Not recently. Somewhere dark. Somewhere filled with heat. June forced herself to breathe. "What would you like us to call you tonight?" Another pause. "D." The rain struck the windows harder. June adjusted her headphones. "All right, D. You said there was something keeping you awake." "There usually is." "Guilt?" "I stopped calling it that years ago." "What do you call it now?" "Memory." His answer was so quiet that it felt meant only for her. June looked through the glass into the control room. Her producer, Evan Cole, normally sat behind the mixing board with a cup of bad coffee and a stack of notes. Tonight, his chair was empty. He had stepped away minutes earlier to investigate a power fluctuation somewhere in the building. June was alone. "Tell me about the memory," she said. The caller breathed slowly. "I gave an order." "What kind of order?" "The kind men obey without asking what it costs." June's pulse began to climb. "Did someone get hurt?" "Yes." "Someone you meant to hurt?" "No." A faint click sounded through the line. Not interference. It sounded like another connection opening somewhere in the network. June glanced at the call monitoring screen. The number had been blocked, routed through at least 6 different locations. The station's tracing software displayed nothing but shifting strings of code. The caller continued. There was supposed to be one man inside the car. A man who had buried children beneath buildings and called it business. The pressure behind June's eyes sharpened. "But he wasn't alone," she whispered. "No." "Who else was there?" "A woman." Lightning flashed over the Chicago River. For 1 second, the entire studio became white. June saw something that was not there. A black car. A woman turning toward her. A silver pendant hanging from a pale throat. Then fire swallowed the image. June jerked back from the microphone. The caller heard the movement. "What happened?" he asked. "I don't know." But that was a lie. Something was happening inside her memory. Not a complete picture. Only fragments. Rain against a windshield. A man telling her to count backward from 5. A hand covering her eyes. A voice promising that the fire could not reach her. The same voice now coming through her headphones. June's lips parted. "Count backward," the caller said suddenly. Her heart stopped. "What?" "From 5. The studio disappeared. She was no longer 31 years old. She was small enough to fit beneath a table. Smoke crawled across a ceiling. Someone with blood on his white shirt was carrying her through a burning hallway. 5. 4. 3. Do not open your eyes, Juniper. 2. The flames cannot know your name. 1. June stared at the microphone. Her next words left her before she could stop them. Damian Cross. The line went silent. Every light on the console went dark. The broadcast died. June ripped off her headphones. The red on-air sign flickered once and disappeared. Beyond the studio glass, the control room was empty and black. "Evan?" No answer. A metallic sound came from the hallway. The station's security door unlocking. June stood so quickly that her chair rolled backward into the wall. The studio was on the 26th floor of Lakefront Broadcasting Tower. After midnight, every elevator required a security key. The stairwell doors locked automatically from the inside. No visitor could reach the studio without passing 2 guards downstairs and another outside the broadcast floor. Yet footsteps were moving toward her. Slow, unhurried. A shadow appeared behind the glass. Then the emergency lights came on. A man stood in the control room. Rainwater darkened the shoulders of his black coat. He was tall, broad through the chest, and motionless in the dim crimson glow. His dark hair was wet, his face severe enough to look carved from stone. June had seen his photograph only twice. Once in an article about an international shipping company. Once in a sealed federal file that had appeared in her apartment and vanished before she could read past the first page. In both photographs, his name had been Damian Cross. Investor. Philanthropist. Owner of half the private security contracts in Chicago. But the man behind the glass was not Adrian. His real name was the one June had spoken on live radio. Damian Cross. The name that frightened judges into changing court schedules. The name police officers refused to write in reports. The name associated with bodies that disappeared into Lake Michigan and companies that collapsed after crossing the wrong family. Damian opened the studio door. June backed toward the wall. He entered alone. The door closed behind him with a soft click. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Damian's eyes moved over her face as though confirming something he had waited years to see. He did not look angry. That frightened her more. "You cut the broadcast," June said. "Yes. My producer. Alive. The guards? Also alive. Where are they?" "Somewhere they cannot interrupt us." June's hands curled at her sides. "You broke into a radio station because I said your name? I came because someone else heard you say it. Thousands of people heard me. Thousands of ordinary people." His gaze shifted toward the dead console. One person listening tonight was not ordinary. Thunder moved through the building. June tried to hold his stare. It felt like standing in front of a locked door, and knowing something dangerous was breathing on the other side. "You called my program?" "Yes." "You confessed to killing a woman." "I confessed to giving the order." "That distinction helps you sleep?" "Nothing helps me sleep." Something in his voice changed. Not softness. Damian Cross did not look capable of softness. But there was exhaustion beneath his control, the kind that lived in bone. He stepped toward the microphone. June stiffened. Damian stopped before entering her reach. He looked at the empty chair across from her. "Sit down." That sounded like an order. It was. "I don't take orders from callers." His eyes returned to hers. For the first time, a trace of something almost like fascination moved across his face. "You did when I told you to count backward." June's mouth went dry. "What do you know about that?" "Sit down, June." "No." The rain battered the windows. Damian studied her for a long moment, then removed his coat. Beneath it, he wore a charcoal suit and a black shirt without a tie. Everything about him suggested wealth, restraint, and violence kept beneath perfect control. He placed the coat over the back of the chair. Then, to June's surprise, he sat first. He positioned himself across the microphone from her, exactly where a guest would sit during an interview. "Continue the conversation," he said. "The broadcast is dead." "I know. Then who am I speaking to?" His expression did not change. "Me. You already know what you did." "I know what happened. That isn't the same as understanding it." Damian leaned back slightly. "Then help me understand." June should have run. She should have screamed, triggered the silent alarm, or thrown the heavy metal microphone stand through the studio window. Instead, she sat. Perhaps because running from Damian Cross seemed useless. Perhaps because part of her still heard a younger version of his voice telling her not to open her eyes. She pulled her chair toward the microphone. "What was the woman's name?" she asked. Damian's jaw tightened. "Elisa Hale." June's vision blurred. She knew that name. Not from memory. From a document she had found at 23, hidden inside a box of witness protection records. The page had been removed before she could learn who Elise Hale was. But she remembered one handwritten sentence. Subject's daughter must never be told what happened to Elise. June pressed a hand against the desk. Damian watched every movement. Who was she? His silence told her the answer would change something permanently. "She was your mother." The studio seemed to tilt. June stared at him. "My mother's name was Caroline Parker." "No. Caroline Parker was the identity the Marshal Service gave her after the Halcyon fire." "What fire?" Damian's eyes darkened. "The one you survived." "I never survived a fire." "You were 11 years old." "No. Your name was Juniper Hale." "Stop. Your father kept financial records for men who believed they owned this city. When he tried to expose them, Victor Sloan burned Halcyon House with 23 people inside. June pushed away from the microphone. You're lying. I carried you out. The words struck harder than a shout. A memory tore open. A burning staircase. Black smoke. A young man with a cut above his eyebrow, lifting her against his chest. His heartbeat beneath her ear. His voice saying, Juniper, count backward from 5. June stood. The room swayed around her. Damian rose immediately, but did not touch her. His hand moved halfway toward her elbow and stopped. That restraint frightened her almost as much as the memories. You knew who I was, she said. Yes. How long? Since the first time I heard your voice on the radio. That was almost 2 years ago. 1 year, 10 months, and 9 days. The precision chilled her. You've been listening since then? Every night you were on air. Why? Damian looked at her as if the answer should have been obvious. Because you were alive. A crash sounded from the control room. The glass behind Damian exploded inward. He reached June before she understood what had happened. His body slammed into hers, driving her beneath the console as 2 sharp bursts cracked through the studio. Gunfire. The microphone spun across the desk. Damian covered June with his body. One arm locked around her head, shielding her face from falling glass. More shots struck the wall. Damian pulled a weapon from beneath his jacket. His voice remained terrifyingly calm. Stay down. He rose just enough to fire twice through the broken window. Someone shouted in the control room. A body hit the floor. June's breath trapped inside her lungs. Damian looked toward the hallway, listening. Footsteps rushed toward them. 2 men in dark suits entered through the opposite door. June recognized one from photographs surrounding Damian at public events. Silver-haired, lean, expressionless. North stairwell compromised, the man said. Elevators are locked. We have 90 seconds before the second team arrives. Damian looked down at June. Blood marked his cheek where glass had cut him, but his voice remained level. Can you walk? I think so. Think later. He offered his hand. June stared at it. The same man who claimed to have saved her as a child had just thrown himself over her without hesitation. The same man had admitted ordering her mother's death. Another burst of gunfire erupted somewhere below. June put her hand in his. Damian pulled her upright. His fingers closed around hers with controlled strength. Do not let go, he said. They moved through the rear production corridor as alarms began screaming throughout the building. Emergency lights flashed red against black walls. Damian kept June behind him, his hand locked around hers while his men opened a service elevator hidden beyond the archives room. The doors parted. Damian guided her inside. Just before they closed, June looked back toward Studio 3. The red on-air light had come alive again. Someone had restored the broadcast. Her microphone lay on the floor beneath broken glass, and through the station speakers, the entire city heard a recording begin to play. June's own voice. Damian Cross. Again, Damian Cross. Again. The name repeated across every frequency owned by Lakefront Broadcasting. Damian stared through the closing doors. For the first time that night, his control fractured. Not with fear for himself, with fear for her. They know who you are now, he said. The elevator dropped into darkness. Damian's armored SUV waited inside a private garage beneath the building. Black vehicles formed a moving wall around them as they left downtown. Rain blurred the city into streaks of silver. Damian sat beside June in the rear compartment while the silver-haired man, whose name was Marcus, drove. June pressed herself against the opposite door. Damian had offered her a coat. She had refused. Glass dust still clung to her hair. A thin line of blood crossed Damian's cheek. You need a hospital, she said. No. You were cut. I've survived worse. That doesn't make bleeding healthy. His gaze settled on her. You still do that. Do what? Take care of people while you're afraid of them. I'm not taking care of you. No? I'm observing that you're bleeding on an extremely expensive seat. The corner of Marcus's mouth almost moved. Damian noticed. Marcus's expression became blank again. June turned toward the window. They crossed the river and headed north instead of toward her apartment. Where are you taking me? A secure location. I'm going home. No. You don't decide that. Tonight I do. She looked back at him. You think saving me gives you the right to control me? No. Then tell your driver to turn around. The men who attacked the station know your current name, your voice, your workplace, and probably your address. Taking you home would be murder performed through politeness. You expect me to trust you? No. His answer came too easily. I expect you to stay alive long enough to decide whether I deserve it. The SUV entered a private underground garage beneath a glass tower on the Gold Coast. Security gates closed behind them. Armed men moved through the shadows, but none came near June without Damian's permission. They took a private elevator to the top floor. The penthouse doors opened onto silence. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Michigan. The storm turned the water into black metal. The rooms were luxurious without warmth. Stone floors, dark wood, sharp architecture, no family photographs. It looked less like a home than a fortress built above the city. Damian removed his jacket. June saw dark blood spreading near his upper arm. "You were shot. Grazed. You said the blood was from glass." "I said nothing." "Sit down." Damian raised an eyebrow. That sounded like an order. It was. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Damian sat on the edge of a marble table. Marcus placed a medical kit nearby and left without a word. June opened the box. "I'm not a nurse," she warned. "I know. You know a disturbing amount about me." "Yes." That wasn't permission to agree. She cut through the fabric near his shoulder. The wound was shallow, but angry and bleeding steadily. Damian did not react when antiseptic touched it. June cleaned the injury, aware of the heat of his skin beneath her fingers. He remained perfectly still, yet his gaze never left her face. The silence became too intimate. "Why were you listening tonight?" she asked. "I listen every night." "You said that." "You haven't asked why." "I'm not sure I want the answer." "Your voice keeps the dead quiet." June's hand paused. Damian looked past her toward the storm. "After my sister died, I stopped sleeping. Then one night, I heard you tell a widower that grief was not proof he had failed the person he loved." "I don't remember saying that." "I do. You recognize me from one sentence?" "I recognize the way you breathed before saying it." June looked at him. The words should have sounded obsessive. They did, but beneath the danger was a loneliness so deep that she could almost feel the shape of it. She finished bandaging his shoulder and stepped away. Damian stood. "Your room is down the hall. I'm not sleeping here." "You are. I have a life. You had one this morning." Herr Enger rose. "I still have one." "Then let me keep it from being buried before sunrise." She hated how calmly he said it, as though death were not a threat but a schedule he had interrupted. "I want my phone. It was compromised. My producer may be hurt." Evan Cole left the building 14 minutes before the attack. June froze. He abandoned the control room? He received a message and walked out through the south garage. That doesn't sound like Evan. No. It sounds like someone using your trust. You don't know him. I know he has transferred money into an offshore account controlled by Victor Sloan. The name felt familiar. Victor Sloan owns Lakefront Broadcasting. He also ordered tonight's attack. Why? Because your voice unlocked something he spent 20 years trying to bury. My memory? Damian's expression hardened. And your inheritance. June stared at him. I don't have an inheritance. Your father held 31% of Lakefront Broadcasting through a private trust. When he died, those shares transferred to Juniper Hale. My father was a mechanic. Your father was Daniel Hale, financial counsel to 3 criminal families, and the only man who collected enough evidence to destroy all of them. The penthouse seemed colder. Then why put me on the radio station he owned? Because Victor wanted you close to the archive hidden inside it. What archive? Your father recorded everything. Where? If I knew, Victor would already be dead. June walked toward the window. Below, Chicago stretched into the rain. Somewhere out there, thousands of listeners had heard her speak the secret name of a mafia boss. Her apartment, her job, and perhaps her entire identity had vanished in less than an hour. A reflection appeared beside hers. Damian had approached without sound. He remained several feet away. You knew this would happen, she said. I knew someone was searching for you. So you watched me? Yes. For nearly 2 years? Yes. My building? Yes. My workplace? Yes. My friends? When necessary. June turned on him. Was my life ever mine? Something flickered behind his eyes. No one followed you into your home. No cameras were placed inside. No calls were intercepted unless they were connected to a threat. You expect gratitude because your surveillance had rules? I expect anger. Good. It means you're still thinking clearly. She wanted to strike him. Perhaps he saw it, because his gaze dropped briefly to her hand. You're not afraid I'll slap you? She asked. No. Why? You would have done it already. June lifted her hand. Damian did not move. The sight of a man feared by an entire city standing still before her fury made something twist inside her. She lowered her hand. I don't know what's real anymore. His voice changed, becoming quieter. You are. That isn't enough. It has to be tonight. June looked away. The storm moved over the lake. Behind her, Damian said, No one enters your room without permission. The door locks from the inside. There are clothes in your size. Her head snapped toward him. You keep clothes for women here? No. Then how are they in my size? I had them brought after the broadcast was cut. The answer was reasonable. It still felt too personal. He moved toward the hallway, then stopped. June. What? If you hear anything outside your door, call the number beside the bed. Who answers? I do. Don't you have guards? Yes. Then why would you answer? Damian held her gaze. Because you would be calling. He walked away before she could respond. June did not sleep. She stood beneath the penthouse shower until the water turned cold, then dressed in soft black pants and a cream sweater that fit her perfectly. The fact that Damian's people had found clothing that honored her body rather than disguising it unsettled her more than it should have. At 4 a.m, she left the bedroom. The penthouse was dark except for a line of light beneath a door at the end of the corridor. June followed it. The room beyond was not an office. It was an archive. Shelves covered every wall. Thousands of vinyl records, digital drives, and labeled audio files stood in perfect order. A sound system occupied the center of the room beside a leather chair. On the nearest shelf, June saw dates. Every broadcast of The Night Window. Every episode since her first night on air. Her stomach tightened. She selected a file at random. March 12. Caller. Woman in Lakeview subject. Leaving her husband. There were handwritten notes beneath the label. June laughed at 2:41. First genuine laugh in 9 days. She pulled another. April 7. Caller. Grieving father. June sounded tired. Security confirmed she left the studio safely at 4:19. Another. August 22. No broadcast. June hospitalized for exhaustion. She turned. Damian stood in the doorway. He wore black trousers and a white shirt, with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. The bandage she had placed beneath the fabric showed faintly at his shoulder. You keep recordings of me? Yes. With notes? Yes. You documented my laughter. I did not write the notes. But you ordered them. No. Then who did? My sister began the system. June frowned. You said your sister was dead. My younger sister, Lily, died at Halcyon House. My older sister, Serafina, is alive. Does she monitor women for all her brothers? Only the ones who prevent them from losing their minds. June stared at him. That isn't romantic. I wasn't trying to be romantic. It's invasive. Yes. Disturbing. Yes. You agree very easily. I have no interest in lying to you. You already lied by omission for 2 years. Damian entered the room. He kept enough distance that she did not feel cornered. You were hidden by federal order, he said. Approaching you would have exposed you. Listening was safer? For you. And for you? His expression became unreadable. No. June looked around the archive. You said my voice keeps the dead quiet. Yes. Do you sit in this room every night? When I'm in Chicago. And when you're not? I take the recordings. Something moved through her. Not affection. Not yet. But the awareness of being needed by a man who seemed incapable of needing anything. She hated that it touched her. You could have called the program sooner, she said. I did. June looked at him sharply. When? 11 times. I would remember your voice. I never spoke. You called and stayed silent? Yes. Why? Damian's gaze moved toward the chair. I wanted to know whether you would remain when there was nothing to fix. June remembered the silent callers. She always waited. Sometimes for 30 seconds. Sometimes for 2 full minutes. She never disconnected first. That was you? Most of the time. Most? Some were ordinary frightened people. A faint sound escaped her before she could stop it. Not quite laughter. More disbelief. Damian watched her with unsettling focus. Then the penthouse alarm sounded. Marcus entered immediately. We found Cole. June's momentary softness vanished. Where? Street Mercy Hospital, Marcus said. He was brought in unconscious. No serious injuries. I'm going. Damian's answer was immediate. No. June turned toward him. He may have betrayed me, but I'm not deciding that from an offshore transfer. It's a trap. Then come with me. The room went silent. Marcus looked toward Damian. June folded her arms. You want me protected? Protect me while I get answers. Damian's jaw tightened. He disliked being challenged. She could see it, but beneath that irritation was something else. Respect. Prepare the vehicles, he told Marcus. Street Mercy Hospital rose above the rain, like a white ship. Damian's men entered first, clearing the private wing. Nurses lowered their voices when they recognized him. Security guards looked away. A surgeon stepped aside without being asked. June had never seen fear operate so quietly. Damian did not threaten anyone. He did not need to. He walked beside June through the hospital corridor, his presence turning every doorway into a place people avoided. Evan lay in a private room with bruising along his jaw and an IV in his arm. When June entered, his eyes filled with shame. "I'm sorry." Damian remained outside the room, visible through the glass. June pulled a chair closer to the bed. "Why did you leave?" Evan looked toward Damian. "Can he hear us?" "Probably. I didn't know what they were going to do." "Who?" "Victor's people." June's chest tightened. "They paid you." "At first, they only asked me to track unusual callers. They said there were threats against the station. You gave them access to my line. I gave them metadata, never recordings. Until tonight." Evan closed his eyes. "They sent a message saying my brother had been taken. They told me to leave the control room and disable the trace. Your brother died 3 years ago. I know that now." June sat back. "They manipulated you. I still left you alone." "Yes." The word hurt him. She saw it. But compassion did not erase betrayal. "Did you know who I was?" "No, I swear." "Did Victor ever mention Juniper Hale?" Evan's eyes opened. "He mentioned Halcyon." Damian entered the room. "Evan went parle." Damian stopped at the foot of the bed. "What did he say?" Damian asked. Evan swallowed. "That when she remembered Halcyon, the station would belong to him permanently." "It already belongs to him," June said. "No," Damian replied. "He controls it. He does not own the hidden shares." Evan looked between them. "There's something else." Damian's attention sharpened. "Victor has a broadcast scheduled tomorrow night. Every lakefront station, every regional affiliate, all local television feeds." "For what?" June asked. "A special report about you." The room went cold. Evan continued. "He's going to say you've been secretly working for Damian. That your program has been transmitting coded messages to organized crime. That's absurd." "It doesn't need to be true," Damian said. "It needs to be repeated." June stood. "What does Victor gain by destroying my reputation?" "He makes you dependent on me," Damian answered. She turned toward him. "And then, he shows the city that anyone connected to Damian Cross becomes contaminated." The way he said his own name sounded like a verdict. Evan reached for June's wrist. Damian moved instantly. He did not touch Evan. He only stepped closer. Evan released her. June noticed. So did Damian. A shadow of possessiveness passed across his face before he buried it. "You're safe here," June told Evan. "But I can't protect you from the consequences of what you did." "I understand." She walked into the corridor. Damian followed. "You were going to break his hand," she said. "No." "You looked at him like you were deciding which bone." "I was deciding whether he was still a threat." He touched my wrist. "Yes, that isn't a threat." Damian stopped beneath the hospital lights. "To you, no." "To you?" His gaze dropped to the place Evan's fingers had touched. "En irritation." June's heartbeat changed. "Are you jealous?" "No." That answer came too quickly. "I do not become jealous." "What do you become?" Damian looked at her. "Unreasonable." A nurse passing nearby immediately turned into another corridor. June should not have felt warmth move beneath her skin. She did anyway. Damian stepped closer. Not enough to touch. Enough that she could feel the restrained force of him. "You should not enjoy provoking me," he said. "I'm not enjoying it. You're lying. You said you had no interest in lying to me. That rule doesn't automatically apply in reverse." His eyes lowered briefly to her mouth. Then the doors at the end of the corridor burst open. 3 men in medical uniforms rushed inside. Damian moved before June registered the weapons beneath their coats. He pushed her behind a concrete support column. Gunfire shattered the lights. The hallway plunged into flashing darkness. Damian returned fire while Marcus's men closed around them. Nurses screamed. Sprinklers erupted overhead, turning the corridor into cold rain. One attacker moved through the smoke toward June. She saw the weapon. Damian saw it too. His face changed. The calm disappeared. He crossed the space with terrifying speed, struck the man's arm aside, and drove him into the wall. The weapon slid across the wet floor. Damian hit him once. The attacker collapsed. Another shot cracked from the far doorway. Damian turned and shielded June with his body. The bullet struck the column inches from his head. June grabbed the fallen weapon without thinking and kicked it beneath a hospital cart. Marcus reached them. South exit. Damian seized June's hand. They ran through the emergency stairwell as alarms filled the building. On the landing below, June slipped on the wet concrete. Damian caught her around the waist. For one suspended second, her full body pressed against his. His hands spread across the curve of her back. Their faces were inches apart. Rainwater from the sprinklers ran down his temples. His breathing was controlled, but his eyes were not. He looked furious, not because she had fallen, because she could have been taken from him. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No. Tell me the truth." "I'm not hurt." His hand remained at her waist. June could feel the moment he realized he was holding her. His fingers tightened once. Then he let go. The restraint was almost more intimate than the touch. They continued down the stairs. Victor Sloan's special report began at 8 the following evening. By then, June had been moved to an abandoned church on Chicago's west side. Street Armands had once served immigrant families and later become a secret meeting ground for the Cross organization. The pews were covered with white sheets. Candles burned beneath faded saints. Rainwater traveled down cracked, stained glass. Damian believed Victor would search every property he officially owned. He did not officially own a church. June sat in the old choir loft watching Victor's face on a portable television. He was handsome in the polished way. Powerful men often were silver at his temples, immaculate navy suit, voice measured with practiced concern. We must ask whether the woman calling herself June Parker has used public airwaves to communicate with one of Chicago's most dangerous criminal figures. Photographs appeared behind him. June leaving the hospital beside Damian. June entering his SUV. Damian shielding her during the attack. The images made protection look like conspiracy. Victor continued. Federal sources have confirmed that Parker's identity may be fabricated. June looked toward Damian. He stood near the altar, speaking quietly with Marcus. Federal sources, she repeated. Damian ended the conversation and approached. Someone inside witness protection is working for Victor. Someone has been working for him since I was a child. Yes. Who? We're narrowing it down, meaning you don't know. Meaning the people responsible will believe they are safe for several more hours. The television displayed an old photograph. A little girl being carried from a burning building. Her face was turned away. The young man carrying her had blood on his shirt. Damian. June stood. Victor's voice filled the church. Records identify the child as Juniper Hale, daughter of disgraced financial advisor Daniel Hale. Sources now allege that June Parker and Juniper Hale are the same person. The report showed June's driver's license, apartment address, and old witness protection documents. Her life was being torn open before the city. Comments flooded social media. Criminaliar. Mafia mistress. She manipulated vulnerable callers. Was the entire show fake? June switched off the television. Silence returned. Damian watched her carefully. Say something, she demanded. What would help? Tell me you're going to destroy him. I am. The certainty in his voice was frightening. June walked down the choir steps. What does destroy mean to you? By morning, Victor Sloan will no longer own a newspaper, a television station, or enough political influence to escape prosecution. And if that fails? Damian's expression answered. June stopped before him. You can't kill every person who hurts me. No. Good. I can kill the ones who intend to continue. That isn't what I meant. I know. Candlelight moved across his face. June looked at the old altar. My listeners believe me. They still do. You didn't see what they were writing. I saw. Then don't lie. Damian moved closer. 1 million people listen to your program. A few thousand are shouting. The rest are waiting to hear your voice. I don't have a station. You have every frequency I can acquire before midnight. She turned back toward him. You would buy a radio network? I already tried. When? 6 months ago. Why? Victor refused to sell. You wanted the station because of me? I wanted the building because your father's archive is inside. The answer landed like cold water. June looked away. Damian's voice lowered. And because Victor controlled the room where you spoke to people who needed you. She faced him again. He had not softened, but neither had he hidden the second truth. What do you want from me? She asked. His jaw shifted. Tonight? Ever. The church became very quiet. Damian looked like a man standing before something more dangerous than a weapon. I want you alive. That isn't everything. No. What else? He stepped closer. June's back touched the edge of a pew. Damian lifted his hand. His fingers stopped inches from her cheek. She felt the heat of them without contact. His eyes searched hers. I want the sound of your voice when it is not meant for strangers. June's breath caught. I want to know who you are when no one is listening. His hand remained suspended. I want to enter a room without wondering whether you disappeared while I was gone. The control in his voice was beginning to fracture. And I want things I have no right to ask from you. June looked at his unfinished touch. Then why did you stop? Because wanting is not permission. The words moved through her more deeply than any touch could have. She lifted her chin. What if I gave you permission? Damian's eyes darkened. To touch my face, she clarified. A dangerous silence followed. Then his fingertips met her cheek. The touch was almost unbearably gentle. Damian Cross, who controlled ports and judges and men who carried guns beneath tailored coats, touched her as though she were something he feared breaking. June closed her eyes. His thumb moved once beneath her cheekbone. The church doors exploded inward. Damian pulled her behind the pew. Men poured through the entrance. Gunfire ripped through the candlelit nave. Stained glass shattered overhead. Marcus's men returned fire from the choir loft while Damian pushed June toward a side passage behind the altar. They entered a narrow stone corridor leading beneath the church. Who knew we were here? June asked as they ran. 3 people. Marcus would die first. Who else? Damian's face hardened. My sister. They reached the underground crypt. A woman waited near the far tunnel entrance. She was elegant, dark-haired, and held herself with the same controlled stillness as Damian. Her black coat was open over a burgundy dress. Serafina, Damian said. June understood immediately. The older sister. The one who had organized the recordings. Serafina looked at June with unmistakable sorrow. I'm sorry. Damian moved between them. What did you do? I gave Victor the church. June's stomach dropped. Why? Serafina's composure broke. He has my son. The secret child. Damian went completely still. You told me Luca was in Florence. He was taken 3 days ago. Victor said he would send him back one piece at a time. Unless I gave him June. Damian's voice became cold enough to silence the tunnel. And you brought armed men to her. I sent a warning to Marcus. After giving Victor the location. I thought you would escape. You thought wrong. Serafina looked at June. I never wanted you hurt. June saw the terror beneath the woman's elegance. A mother cornered by men who understood where to place the knife. How old is your son? June asked. 12. Damian turned sharply. This does not concern you. A child was taken because Victor wants me. He was taken because Victor wants leverage. Sama result. June faced Serafina. Where is he? Lakefront Tower. The radio station? Serafina nodded. Victor wants June in Studio 3 tomorrow at midnight. He wants her to read a confession on air and transfer the Hale shares to him. And if she refuses? Damian asked. Serafina closed her eyes. He kills Luca during the broadcast. Damian's expression became lethal. No. June looked at him. We're going. No. A 12-year-old boy is not your responsibility. He became my responsibility when Victor used my life to take him. Damian stepped close. I will retrieve my nephew. How? Without you. Victor expects me. That is why you will not be there. June's anger sharpened. You don't get to hide me while everyone else bleeds. I get to keep you alive. By turning me into a prisoner? By preventing you from becoming a sacrifice. What if I choose to take the risk? You don't understand the risk. I understand that you're afraid. The words stopped him. June moved closer. You're not afraid Victor will win, she said. You're afraid you'll lose me. Damian's eyes held hers. Yes. The answer came without denial. Without defense. Serafina looked away. Damian's voice dropped. I have watched you survive from a distance for almost 2 years. I have listened to you breathe through nights when I could not. I have built entire security systems around the possibility that one day someone would find you. His hand closed around June's wrist. Not painfully, desperately. I will burn every piece of this city before I allow Victor to put you behind that microphone. June looked down at his hand. Then the boy dies. Damian's grip loosened. He is my blood. And I am what? The question left her before she could stop it. Something raw crossed his face. You are the reason blood is no longer enough. Silence filled the crypt. June's heart struck painfully against her ribs. She placed her hand over his. Then trust me enough to let me help. Damian closed his eyes for one brief second. When he opened them, fear had become calculation. We do it my way. We do it together. His jaw tightened. Together, he agreed. The plan depended on June returning to the air. Victor believed he controlled the station's transmitters. but Damian controlled the underground fiber network serving half the city. Marcus could route the broadcast beyond Lakefront Tower and preserve anything Victor said. June would enter Studio 3, wearing a concealed transmitter. Damian's men would infiltrate the building through old service tunnels beneath the river. Serafina would provide Victor's security codes. The FBI would receive the live feed only after Victor confessed to the Halcyon fire and the manipulation of June's witness protection file. June hated relying on federal agents, but Damian had one person he trusted, Special Agent Naomi Reed, whose husband had been killed investigating Victor's financial network. At 11:30 the next night, black SUVs moved through rain-darkened Chicago. June sat beside Damian in the rear vehicle. She wore a deep red dress beneath a black coat, chosen because Victor expected her to look frightened and broken. She refused to give him the satisfaction. Damian had said nothing for 10 minutes. The city passed outside in blue and silver reflections. Finally, June looked at him. "You're staring. I'm memorizing. Don't say things like that before a dangerous plan. I say what is true. You're supposed to reassure me." "I do not know how." I noticed. His hand rested on the seat between them. June placed hers over it. Damian looked down. His fingers turned beneath her palm, slowly interlocking with hers. The gesture felt more intimate than a kiss. "Tell me the rest," she said. "What rest? What happened to my mother?" His hand tightened. The intelligence came from Victor. He said his father would be traveling alone. I ordered the car stopped on Lower Wacker. "Stopped?" Damian looked toward the window. The men used explosives. June forced herself not to pull away. "Did you know my mother was inside?" "No." "When did you find out?" 3 hours later." "What did you do?" "I killed the men responsible." "The men who followed your order?" "Yes." "That didn't make you innocent." "No." She studied his profile. "Did you ever try to find me?" "Immediately. But I had already disappeared. Your witness file was moved before sunrise. Every person connected to it either vanished or refused to speak. And then you heard me on the radio." "Yes. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because the truth would give you a reason to hate me." "You thought hiding it would be better?" "No, I thought you were safer hating a stranger than mourning another parent." June removed her hand. Damian let her. He did not attempt to reclaim the touch. That mattered. "What did my mother know?" she asked. "She knew where your father hid the original Halcyon recordings." "Did she tell you?" "She died before she could." June looked out at the city. Damian spoke again. "There is something else." She almost laughed bitterly. "Of course there is. Your mother was not killed instantly." June turned. "She lived for 8 minutes." "How do you know?" "I reached the car before the fire department." A new memory surfaced. A man's hands pulling at twisted metal. A woman coughing through smoke. Her mother's silver pendant. "What did she say?" Damian's voice nearly failed. "She said, 'Keep Juniper away from the tower.'" Lakefront Tower. June closed her eyes. The archive was inside the station. Her mother had tried to warn Damian. The SUV slowed. They had arrived. Before Marcus opened the door, Damian caught June's hand. "When this ends, you may leave." She looked at him. "I will give you new documents, money, protection, anything you ask." "You're planning my escape from you?" "I am giving you what I should have given from the beginning. A choice." "Yes." "And what will you do?" Damian's expression became empty. "Return to what I was." June knew that was impossible. She had seen the man beneath the control. The lonely figure sitting in a dark room listening to her voice. "You can't go back," she said. "I can." "You're lying." "This time, perhaps." The door opened. Rain rushed inside. June leaned toward him. For one suspended moment, Damian stopped breathing. She kissed his cheek. Not his mouth. "Not yet. A promise. Not surrender." "When this ends," she whispered, "don't decide for me." Then she stepped into the rain. Victor's men escorted June through the front entrance of Lakefront Tower. News vans surrounded the building, but all reporters had been forced behind barricades. Protesters held signs accusing June of corruption. Others held handmade posters reading, "Let her speak." The divided crowd roared when they saw her. June walked through the glass doors without lowering her head. Victor waited in the lobby. He smiled as though welcoming an honored guest. "June Parker." "Juniper Hale," she corrected. His smile tightened. "Memory suits you. Truth suits you less." Victor offered his arm. June ignored it. They entered the elevator. 4 armed men surrounded them. Victor watched her reflection in the mirrored wall. "You look remarkably calm. I've interviewed murderers, grieving parents, abandoned wives and politicians. You're not as unique as you think. You sound like your father. Did you kill him? Victor smiled. Not personally. The elevator rose. June's hidden transmitter vibrated once against her skin. Marcus was connected. Damian was listening. Victor continued. Your father believed information made him powerful. He forgot that information only matters when someone survives long enough to use it. You burned Halcyon House. I corrected a financial imbalance. 23 people died. Most of them were criminals. There were children. Victor's expression did not change. Children inherit wars they do not understand. The elevator doors opened onto the broadcast floor. Studio 3 had been rebuilt after the attack. New glass separated the booth from the control room. The red on-air sign glowed above the door. Luca sat inside the control room. The 12-year-old boy had dark hair and Serafina's eyes. His hands were bound to the chair, but he appeared uninjured. Relief nearly weakened June's knees. Victor noticed. Compassion, he said. Such an exploitable quality. June entered the studio. A legal document waited beside the microphone. Transfer of ownership. The Hale shares would give Victor complete control of Lakefront Broadcasting and the building beneath which the archive was supposedly hidden. A camera faced her. Victor sat across from June. Read the statement, he said. And then Luca goes free? After you sign. June adjusted the headphones. Through them, she heard nothing but static. Victor pressed a button. The on-air light brightened. Across Chicago, televisions and radios switched to the emergency broadcast. June looked through the glass at Luca. He was frightened, but trying not to show it. She understood that kind of fear. The fear of children who knew powerful adults had failed them. June leaned toward the microphone. My name is June Parker. Victor's gaze sharpened. She continued. But I was born Juniper Hale. The city listened. For most of my life, I was told that my past was too dangerous to remember. Tonight, a man named Victor Sloan wants me to confess that I used this program to communicate with criminals. Victor tapped the paper. June ignored it. The truth is that Victor Sloan ordered the Halcyon House fire 20 years ago. Victor smiled faintly. You have no evidence. His voice traveled across the live microphone. June looked directly at him. Thank you for joining the conversation. Victor's smile vanished. Behind the control room glass, one of his men reached for the broadcast switch. The lights went out. Gunfire erupted somewhere below. Emergency power activated, bathing the studio in red. Victor stood. What did you do? June stayed at the microphone. I opened the window. An explosion shook the floor. Damian's men had entered the building. Victor seized June's arm and pulled her from the chair. The studio door opened. Ruth Calhoun stepped inside. June stared. Ruth had managed the night window since its first broadcast. She had helped June rent her apartment, comforted her after panic attacks, and taught her how to use silence on air. She had been more than a manager. She had been family. Ruth held a weapon. I'm sorry, she said. June's heart broke more quietly than she expected. You were my handler. Ruth nodded. After Halcyon, I worked for the Marshal's Service. And for Victor. He found my daughter. Your daughter died. No. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. He kept her hidden. He told me she would live. As long as I kept you from remembering. Victor looked irritated. Enough. June understood. Every therapist who discouraged memory recovery. Every document that vanished. Every job opportunity that led her back to Lakefront Tower. Ruth had guided all of it. You put me on the radio, June said. Victor believed your father encoded the archive location inside something you remembered. He thought speaking for hours, every night, might make you reveal it. Did I? Ruth's gaze dropped toward the microphone. 3 weeks ago, you hummed a melody during the break. June remembered. A lullaby without words. Her mother's voice. Ruth continued. The melody corresponded to the elevator sequence leading beneath Studio 3. Victor turned toward June. That is why your voice matters. A burst of gunfire struck the corridor. Victor dragged June toward the control room. Ruth raised her weapon. The studio door flew inward. Damian entered through smoke and broken glass. Blood marked one side of his shirt. His weapon remained steady. His eyes found June first. Only after confirming she was alive did he look at Victor. The temperature of the room seemed to drop. Release her, Damian said. Victor pulled June against his chest and pressed a weapon to her side. Put yours down. Damian did not move. Now, Damian lowered the weapon to the floor. June saw what the surrender cost him. Not pride. Control. Victor smiled. The great Damian Cross, disarmed by a radio host. Damian's gaze never left June. She is not a radio host. Victor laughed softly. What is she then? Damian's answer crossed the city through the open microphone. Everything I have left. June's throat tightened. Victor heard the emotional truth and despised it. You killed her mother. Yes. The word filled the studio. June closed her eyes briefly. Victor pressed the weapon harder against her. Tell her how calmly you gave the order. Damian's voice remained controlled, but his eyes held agony. I believed you were inside the car. And when you learned Elise was there, I tried to save her. You watched her burn. Yes. June opened her eyes. Damian did not look away from her guilt. He offered no excuse. Victor smiled against her hair. Ask him what he did afterward. June looked at Damian. What did you do? I spent 15 years preparing to kill him. Victor's expression sharpened. Damian continued. Then I heard your voice. Something changed in Victor's face. Jealousy. Not romantic. The jealousy of a man who had built an empire on control and discovered that one ordinary woman's voice held more power over Damian than fear ever had. You were supposed to destroy each other, Victor said. That was the point. June understood. The false intelligence. Victor's silence confirmed it. You placed my mother in the car, she said. She volunteered to meet my father. You told Damian the car would be empty except for him. I knew Cross would attack. Damian's entire body became still. The confession traveled through every active broadcast frequency. Victor realized too late. He turned toward the microphone. A red light blinked on the console. Live. June drove her heel down onto Victor's foot and twisted from his grip. The weapon fired. Damian moved between them. The bullet struck him beneath the ribs. He staggered. June screamed his name. Damian remained standing. Victor aimed again. Ruth fired first. The bullet struck Victor's shoulder, spinning him against the console. His weapon slid beneath the desk. Ruth lowered hers, shaking. For my daughter, she whispered. Victor lunged toward the fallen gun. Damian reached him. The fight was fast and brutal. Victor struck Damian's wound. Damian drove him into the glass partition. The pane cracked, but held. They crashed against the broadcast console, tearing cables from the wall. June reached Luca and cut the restraints from his wrists with a piece of broken plastic. Run to the hallway, she told him. I'm not leaving you. You sound like your uncle. A shadow of fear crossed the boy's face. My uncle? Damian is coming back. June believed it because she had to. Across the studio, Damian forced Victor to his knees. He wrapped one hand around Victor's throat. Victor laughed through the pressure. Do it. Let her see what you are. Damian's face held no mercy. June knew he would kill Victor. He would do it for Halcyon, for Elise, for Luca, for every year stolen from them. And once he did, the transformation inside him might end. June crossed the studio. Damian. He did not release Victor. Look at me. His eyes found hers. Blood darkened his shirt. June moved closer. If you kill him now, it won't be justice. He deserves worse. I know. He will escape. Not after what the city heard. You trust the law? No. Then move away. June knelt beside him. She placed her hand against his cheek. Damian's grip tightened around Victor's throat. Don't let him decide what you become, she whispered. Victor stared at them with hatred. Damian looked into June's eyes. Slowly, his fingers opened. Victor collapsed, coughing. Sirens rose beneath the tower. Federal agents stormed the corridor. Naomi Reed entered first, weapon raised. Victor was arrested on live television before 3 million listeners. Ruth surrendered beside him. Damian tried to stand. His knees gave way. June caught him. His weight pulled them both to the floor. She pressed her hands over the wound. Stay with me. Damian looked up at her. The feared Mafia Boss, who had commanded Chicago from rooms no judge could enter, now lay beneath the red studio lights with fear in his eyes. Not fear of death, fear that she would leave before he could say what he had hidden. I love you, he said. June's breath broke. Damian's hand found hers. I loved you before I knew what to call it. Don't speak. I need you to hear it. I hear you. You do not owe me forgiveness. Damian. You owe me nothing. His eyes began to close. June leaned over him. This is the night window, she whispered, her voice shaking as the microphone carried it across Chicago. And tonight, the man who never asked anyone for mercy is going to stay awake with me. Damian's mouth moved faintly. 5, June said. His eyes opened. Four. Paramedics rushed into the studio. 3. They lifted him onto a stretcher. Tfo. Damian refused to release her hand. 1. June walked beside him into the flashing lights. Damian survived surgery. The bullet had missed his heart by less than an inch. For 3 days, June remained inside Street Mercy Hospital under federal protection. She slept in a chair beside his bed, waking whenever the monitors changed rhythm. Marcus stood outside the room. Serafina and Luca waited in the private family lounge. Mother and son had reunited before dawn. Neither spoke about her betrayal, but Damian had already ordered that no one punish her. June understood why. He had learned that love could be manipulated because it mattered. Punishing Serafina for being a terrified mother would have meant pretending he had not nearly burned Chicago for June. On the 4th morning, Damian woke fully. June was reading transcripts from the federal case when his voice reached her. "You stayed." She looked up. His face was pale, his body weakened, but his eyes were clear. "You make that sound surprising. You had every reason to leave. I also had reasons to stay." Damian tried to sit up. Pain tightened his expression. June stood immediately. "Don't. I dislike being horizontal during important conversations." "You were shot. I noticed." She adjusted the bed. Damian watched her. "The Hale shares belong to you," he said. "Victor's holdings are frozen. Lakefront Broadcasting will be transferred after the federal case. You're discussing corporate ownership 4 minutes after waking? I've been awake for 11. You pretended to sleep? You looked peaceful." June folded her arms. "That is disturbingly consistent with your personality." A trace of warmth entered his eyes. Then it disappeared. "There is another document." "What document?" "Marcus has it." "What does it do?" "Dissolves the Cross organization's illegal holdings and transfers the legitimate companies into a protected trust." June stared. "You're giving up your empire. I am removing the part of it that can be used against you. You built that empire your entire life. I built it to become powerful enough that no one could take another person from me." His chaza held hers. "It failed. Damian, Victor used it to reach you. My enemies will continue to use it." "So you destroy everything?" "Not everything. What remains?" He reached for her hand. His fingers were weaker than she remembered, but the touch was still careful. "You." June's eyes burned. "You don't get to make me responsible for your redemption." "I'm not. You can't become a different man just to keep me." "I know. Then why do it?" "Because I no longer want to be the man who would have existed without you." Silence settled around them. June looked down at their joined hands. "I haven't forgiven you for my mother." "I know. I may never forgive all of it." "I know. I'm still angry about the surveillance." "You should be." "I need honesty." "You will have it." "I need doors that lock from my side." "They will. And when I say no, it means no. When I say I need space, I will give it." She raised an eyebrow. Damian's expression tightened. "I will attempt to give it." June laughed. The sound surprised them both. Damian looked at her as if he had waited years to hear it from a distance, and could not believe it now belonged to the room they shared. June leaned closer. "This is the part where you ask me what I want." His eyes searched hers. "What do you want?" She touched his face. "A life that is mine." "Yes." "The radio program." "Yes." "The truth about my parents." "You will have every file." "And you." Damian stopped breathing. June continued. "Not the man who owns rooms before entering them. Not the man who decides what everyone needs without asking." His gaze darkened with emotion. "Which man?" "The one who waited on silent phone calls because he wanted to know whether I would stay." Damian lifted her hand to his lips. He did not kiss it until she nodded. Then his mouth touched her fingers. Reverent. Restrained. Dangerous in its tenderness. "I can be that man," he said. June leaned down and kissed him. This time not his cheek. His hand rose toward her waist and stopped. June placed it there herself. Damian's fingers settled against the curve of her body. He kissed her slowly, without command, allowing her to decide the distance between them. For the first time in years, neither of them was speaking into darkness. 4 months later, Rain returned to Chicago. Lakefront Broadcasting Tower no longer carried Victor Sloan's name. The company had been reorganized under the Hale Foundation, an independent network dedicated to investigative journalism, survivor advocacy, and programs for people rebuilding their lives after violence. June refused the executive office. She chose Studio 3. The broken glass had been replaced. The walls were painted deep midnight blue. A new silver microphone stood at the center of the desk. Above the soundproof window, the red on-air sign waited. At 1:58 inches the morning, June entered the studio wearing a dark red dress beneath a soft black cardigan. The dress followed her full figure without apology. She looked beautiful, because she had always been beautiful, not because danger had transformed her, and not because a powerful man had chosen her. She carried her confidence differently now. Not as armor. As ownership. Outside the booth, producers prepared the first broadcast of the renewed night window. Marcus stood near the elevator, pretending not to be security. Serafina and Luca listened from the private lounge upstairs. Federal trials against Victor Sloan and his political network had begun. Ruth Calhoun had agreed to testify in exchange for protection for her daughter, who had been found alive in Montreal. Damian had spent months dismantling the criminal machinery surrounding his family. Some men had resisted. Chicago had endured several loud weeks. But the docks now operated through legitimate contracts. The private prisons were sold. The blackmail archives were handed to federal investigators. Most shocking of all, Damian had destroyed the original Cross ledger, the document that gave him leverage over judges, senators, and rival families. He burned it inside the ruins of Halcyon House while June watched. Not for forgiveness. For freedom. At 2 o'clock, the opening music began. June sat before the microphone. Good evening, Chicago. Across the city, lights remained on. Taxi drivers turned up their radios. Nurses paused in hospital corridors. People who had believed her and people who had doubted her listened together. This is June Parker. Some of you know that was not the first name I was given, but it is the name I chose. And tonight, choice is what I want to talk about. Beyond the glass, the elevator doors opened. Damian stepped into the control room. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit and carried no visible weapon. His presence still changed the air. Producers straightened. Security officers became alert. Men who had never met him somehow knew not to block his path. But Damian did not enter the studio. He stopped outside the glass door and waited. June saw him. 4 months earlier, he would have opened the door because he believed protection gave him the right. Tonight, he stood beneath the glowing red sign and waited for permission. June continued speaking into the microphone. Sometimes choice is not dramatic. Sometimes it is a locked door that only you can open. Sometimes it is telling the truth after years of silence. Damian's eyes remained on hers. And sometimes, June said, it is deciding that love does not have to feel like captivity. She pressed the door release button. The lock clicked. Damian entered quietly. He sat across from her in the guest chair, the same position he had taken on the night they met. June adjusted the second microphone. Would you like us to use your real name tonight? She asked. A faint smile touched his mouth. Yes. What should we call you? Damian Cross. The name traveled through Chicago again. This time, the broadcast did not die. No gunfire shattered the glass. No one cut the power. June looked at him across the silver microphones. What keeps you awake, Damian? His eyes softened only for her. The possibility that I might wake up and discover I dreamed all of this. All of what? You. June reached across the desk. Damian looked at her hand. He took it only after she turned her palm upward. You once told me guilt was another name for memory, she said. Yes. What do you call it now? He considered the question. A door. To what? The man I was. And is that door open? No. Locked? Damian's fingers tightened gently around hers. From your side. June smiled. Outside, rain covered Chicago in silver. Black cars waited discreetly across the street, but none surrounded the entrance. The city remained dangerous. Damian remained feared. There were still enemies, trials, and memories that would take years to understand. But inside Studio 3, the red light glowed warmly above them. June leaned toward the microphone. For everyone listening alone tonight, the window is open. Damian lifted her hand to his lips. And for the first time, June continued, no one here is hiding. The music rose slowly beneath her voice. Beyond the glass, dawn began forming over Lake Michigan. Damian remained beside her as the darkness receded, not standing in front of her, not watching from a distant room, and not deciding what she needed, simply staying because she had asked him to. And when the red on-air light finally went dark, June did not let go of his hand.